Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer, joined by the super team today, Mike Gallagher, Justin Fan of Underdog Fantasy. We are here to try to break down an 8-game slate that is just filled with injury question marks. We think it's an 8-game slate. We hope it's an 8-game slate. We will find out later today if it is still an 8-game slate or not. Justin, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on these Fridays. How are you doing, my man?
Yeah, glad you're bringing me on just a regular Friday. Nothing really going on. Just ambushing me with protocols left and right, just trying to keep track of who's playing, who isn't. I think we're at that point where we might as well from the Underdog account just tweet who's actually
Yeah. Get ready for the Underdog Fantasy available players tweet. These are coming soon to a Twitter screen near you.
Yeah. So we got 48 players in the protocols right now that are out. And yeah, we've had 3 double-digit days in the last 4 days. So 13 on Tuesday, 11 on Thursday, and then 10 today and counting. So yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, exactly. Mike, captain of the This Is Fine fan club with the Homer Bushes backdrop today. How are you?
Oh, there's a comment. I usually do this when I miss something. I was on point yesterday with all my takes.
You were Sadiq Bey flag plant.
This is just a full-on. This is a Homer Bush just in general today. It's so bad, man. I can't believe I had to rewrite matchups like so many times again. I just can't take it. But we're good. We're good.
The content game, you're just trying to get the content out before more things happen that you have to edit it, so you can just be like, I'm done with it. Like I'm like, it's there. It is what it is. Adapt world. Okay. So I think the best way to kind of organize this show is to first talk through the teams that are battling severe health and safety protocols issues and are so diminished roster wise that there's like either real clear small number of players in the rotation or potentially risk of these teams not playing tonight because they don't have enough players. And, it's grouped in a way that you can kind of just talk about games with this too. So let's start with talking about the Celtics versus Warriors game.
ESPN, and just a quick ad, the 2 ESPN games have 4 teams all affected by the COVID stuff in the last 24 hours. It's just
so these teams, Celtics and Warriors, are mildly impacted. This game has like no risk of being canceled or anything like that to this point. I mean, things can obviously change as we've seen. But so far, the Warriors added Jordan Poole into the health and safety protocols. He has been ruled out today, and the Celtics added Al Horford and Grant Williams into health and safety protocols in or out as well. Obviously, when we've seen Horford out in the past, Grant Williams has started, so it's going to be a different type of situation now. Justin, how do you expect Boston to handle the absence of both Horford and Williams tonight against the Warriors?
Yeah, it should be a good Time Lord spot just because I don't know how Enes plays a ton in this matchup overall. And I think just generally we'll see a ton of smaller lineups from the Celtics and here where guys like Romeo Langford, Jay Rich, Nesmith will play a really big roles off the bench. So we're expecting the starting lineup to be Smart, Schroeder, Jalen, Jason Tatum, and Time Lord. The problem with the Celtics here, you really don't want to test this Warriors defense. There are bad matchups galore for this Celtics team. I'm not really interested in Schroeder if he's getting Gary Payton II, who's been one of the best defenders statistically this season. And then Jalen's going to get Andrew Wiggins. Jason Tatum's going to get Draymond Green. So just tough spots all around for the Celtics. Anybody on that side you're really interested? I mentioned Time Lord as a guy that I'd most be interested just in it with his minutes upside here without Grant Williams. Anyone else on the Celtics side do you guys like?
Yeah, I'm with you. Just because the reasons you said, like, this is such a terrible Enes Kanter spot. They'll have like Juancho Hernan-Gomez fill some minutes. Losing Grant and Horford's huge for him. So I totally agree. Everything you said is like exactly what I wrote in matchups. So won't double dip on you. But yeah, we're for sure expecting. I'd be shocked if Schroeder doesn't start. Ami Udoka has basically said if any starters are out, any of them, it'll be Schroeder starting. So expect him to play a lot. Yeah, like you said, the matchup's important. Like I'm with you. I think Gary Payton starts just because Damian Lee's been really bad, but we'll talk about that. But yeah, I just completely agree with what you said.
Yeah. So Mike, what do you think on the Warriors side in terms of how Jordan Poole's absence impacts things for them?
Yeah, I mean, the Jaylen Brown and Schroeder factor, two pretty good offensive players. It certainly makes you think you'd want to lean into defense more than you normally would and go Gary Payton too. So I think that makes a lot of sense there. And then it's pretty straightforward. Like they'll have, maybe Moses Moody, maybe Damian Lee should get more minutes, I would say. But yeah, losing Poole's not the biggest deal. Obviously, it helps Wiggins a little bit, helps Curry a little bit, maybe Draymond to a small degree with more offensive ball handling going his way. But
I am interested to see if they stagger Wiggins away from Steph now, like they were with Jordan, away from Steph to which could lead to a spike game in usage from Wiggins. Curry has been the one guy who has really, really benefited in usage when Jordan Poole is off the floor. Pretty much everybody else, if you look at NBA Wowie stuff, is pretty much the same. And then Steph's usage rate spikes up to like 36% when Jordan Poole's off the floor. So big opportunity for Steph tonight. Certainly, the Celtics are a pretty decent defensive team, so not the cleanest of matchups, but really, really big usage opportunity there. And the other thing I'd note about Gary Payton likely sliding in that starting lineup, there's more reason to do that too when you want some semblance of offense coming off the bench. And so Damian Lee provides a little bit more offense and shot creation than I mean, it's slim. It's Damian Lee, Otto Porter, Bielitsa. Those guys can create a little bit of offense in the second unit. But I do think you could see Wiggins, especially with Iguodala back too. They can play the Steph, Payton, Draymond, Iguodala in a big lineup and basically have all of the offensive responsibility on Steph, because you can do that with all the gravity that he pulls around the court, because you don't need shot creation. He creates shot creation for other people just by running around screens. And especially with Iguodala and Draymond passing, like they'll be able to find those guys, or JTA, whoever they choose to in those lineups. So I think the second unit lineups could be heavy with Wiggins and Porter and those types of guys. From a DFS perspective on the Golden State side, I think it's a good opportunity for Steph to have a ceiling game for sure.
Yeah, I'm not really afraid of this spot against Marcus Smart really that much. I mean, he's done well in the past in this matchup before, and you mentioned the staggering with Wiggins them playing apart more minutes out of necessity today, which I definitely think will happen. Steph should should see even a bigger spike in usage as is like that you mentioned, like without Jordan Poole. The wow.
Yeah. It could be a 40% usage rate game for stuff like that. Would not surprise me.
Just to hammer home that point, wrote in matchups today that last year in with Smart, he put up 43 points. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the next game that I had listed for COVID type stuff is Lakers and Wolves. The other ESPN game tonight. We've got on the Wolves side today, Anthony Edwards and Taurean Prince added into protocol, and those came kind of like a little bit staggered apart. So I'm not so sure that we're not done with the Wolves situation. Those have been the first two guys, I believe, from the team to go in. And once that happens, you start to get, testing through everybody, and those results can kind of come in staggered throughout the day. So I'm not sure we're done with Minnesota here. On the Lakers side, we've got Talen Horton-Tucker, Dwight Howard, Russell Westbrook now thrown into health and safety protocols. Malik Monk went in and came back out from health and safety protocols. He's still listed out on the injury report, but all indications from the beats are that he is tested back in and he's available. So Justin, do you want to talk a little bit about what we expect in terms of number of players available for the Lakers tonight? Because they're really banged up.
Yeah, with the Lakers especially, they're really short on ball handlers in particular. We should see LeBron kind of take on that point guard role tonight. They don't have Russ. I don't think they want to play Rondo that much. I mean, he got a DNP-CD recently, so like he's pretty far down the pecking order. I don't know how eager they are to dust off Isaiah Thomas off that 10-day either. So it's going to be a lot of ball handling responsibility for LeBron. With Malik Monk, I'm pretty sure he's good to go. Given that he only spent 2 days in the protocols, presume that it was just a close contact instead of a positive test. So and it also helps that if he only missed 2 days, he's not away from the team and he's not practicing, so his conditioning should be right. So I think he'll play a decent role in this one, especially given their lack of bench options. Like their bench right now is like Rondo, Monk, Bazemore, and Carmelo, I think today. Correct me if I'm missing anybody.
It just depends on who they start. Assuming they start DeAndre Jordan in that kind of token center spot with DeAndre Jordan, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, Wayne Ellington, and then Austin Reeves is probably the likely starters there. You could swap Monk for an Ellington or a Reeves, but Monk has a little bit of shot creation to him and a little bit of ball handling that you'll probably separate a little bit more from LeBron, because LeBron and AD can cover most of the offensive responsibility in that main lineup. So you get the lower usage, kind of spread the floor, shooting type guys alongside LeBron and AD, and I think that's the rotation that makes the most sense.
Yeah, just to hammer home some points from you guys, just 16 minutes of Rondo with AD and LeBron this year out of 108 minutes with AD and LeBron with Westbrook. So I'm with you. Very little overlap. I think we put 7 minutes of LeBron Rondo overlap in the projections. And LeBron, I mean, he's going to be handling the ball a lot. We saw him the championship year be a lot of heavy point guard with KCP and those guys. So certainly not foreign territory for him. And a matchup that's interesting now with Anthony Edwards. We'll see. We'll talk about them in a second.
Yeah. How much Austin Reeves are we seeing today?
All of them. I think it's going to be close to 30 minutes, if not more. I think Ellington is the guy that I think fits best for playing a lot next to LeBron, but I don't know how much he can handle in terms of like really getting up there. So I think between Monk, Ellington, and Reeves and Carmelo, you'll get all those guys around 30 tonight, essentially, to like kind of make this all work. The only way that doesn't happen is if Bazemore goes up considerably or Rondo goes up. And we've already talked about the reasons it seems unlikely that Rondo would. I think the similar reasons for Bazemore. I mean,
Bazemore should not be on an NBA roster at this point. Let's be real. I mean, this dude is not good at basketball at all. So, yeah, I mean, out of this team, I think LeBron and Reeves are the two that interest me the most. LeBron clearly just with the ball handling responsibilities, his splits with Russ off the court have been amazing. Then Reeves, his minute projection, especially given the weakness of their depth, on the wing with the Bazemore, with the Rondo. So are those two like your guys' favorite plays out of this team as well?
Yeah,
for sure for me.
I think LeBron. I like LeBron more than AD. Our projections right now have AD above LeBron. That's always been kind of like a challenging thing because AD is such a good per minute producer historically. But I feel better about the way LeBron is playing right now. And then on the cheap guys, I would say, I probably would consider Monk ahead of Reeves. I think looking at pricing now, they're all like Reeves is 3,300 on DraftKings, Monk is 4,400. So maybe not enough with that price gap, but I think there's going to be enough value that you're not even going to need to look around the Lakers' value that much. I think there will be other value that will be more compelling, but I think LeBron and AD are just going to be in fantastic spots. And I think, you could get a spike game from any one of these guys that, could touch like 25 to 35 fantasy points with Carmelo, Malik, Ellington, and Reeves, just if they get hot from three. Because if they do, they could see their minutes spike into the mid 30s as well, and we're not projecting that currently.
Do you think there's any like some risk there with Malik, or you still feel pretty good about him coming out just 2 days in the protocols?
Yeah, there's clearly some risk. I mean, obviously, I will be hoping they update the injury report to include him not on it anymore sometime later in the day. But yeah, I think there's certainly some risk. The thing for Malik though is that he should be staggered into lineups that really have him focused as like the number 2 usage guy, because he should likely be in lineups where it's just him with one of LeBron or AD is my guess. My guess is it'll be Rondo, AD, and LeBron Monk is my guess in terms of how they're staggering those things. And I think those lineups could be very useful to Malik, who has shown an ability back in his Charlotte days to carry big usage rates. He has not had to in LA, obviously.
And I think one thing that's worth noting too is the matchup here too, because I think if Ant Edwards was playing, there could be more Bazemore minutes here. Yep. But without him, I think that really changes the kind of math and how because like they have Avery Bradley as their on-point defender. They don't really need that as much anymore. Sure, D'Lo, but I think it really helps out. And then Austin Reeves, man, he got like total full burn. Subbed in mid 5.5 minutes in the third quarter. Played the rest of the way except for 2 minutes in that Dallas game, including overtime.
And he paid it off with that game winner, AR-15.
Still tilting about that. Cost us a Westbrook under assist prop.
Wow.
But we had Westbrook under 8.5, and he went into overtime with 6. and in the last minute and a half got 3 to beat us by 1, including the game winner.
Right there.
So that was a tough beat for sure. On the Wolves side of things, no Anthony Edwards. How do they try to fill these minutes, Justin?
I think it's probably a combination like Okogie and McDaniels and Malik Beasley, obviously. Beasley being the biggest winner by far out of this group. Towns has really benefited in those minutes without Anthony Edwards. I think like a plus 8% usage rate differential.
Huge increases.
Big Towns game. I think, I like the spot quite a bit for him. This Lakers defense still pretty vulnerable overall and in the interior. So, I like Towns, like Beasley. Those are the two biggest winners for me.
Yeah, Beasley played in the last 15 games without D'Lo. He played 35 minutes a game. Obviously, I know D'Lo and Ant aren't apples to apples, but they're offensive options. So losing that big offensive option really leans into Malik Beasley. We know that Finch likes to have 2 defensive players on there. So honestly, I was thinking like kind of galaxy braining, but like Beverly isn't like as helpful against LeBron because LeBron has so much size. So I was thinking like, do they go bigger? Malik at the 2, D'Lo, McDaniels, Vanderbilt, Cat, and go that way. Just kind of galaxy brain thought. But
Malik hasn't started a game this season, I don't think, right?
No, he hasn't. No. But I mean that's because Anthony Edwards hasn't missed a game in his career. So I think I still think he start. I'd be pretty surprised if he doesn't start.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Beverly is the guy who I think could get chopped down here. That's been playing a decent bit lately and been playing pretty well. Just because, as Mike alluded to, the Lakers' size, especially with the options that they're going to play, are going to demand. When LeBron's the point guard, you're just playing a bunch of other wings out there anyway. So, Bev would be the guy that I'd be a little bit careful with. Obviously, big opportunities in terms of increased opportunity for D'Angelo Russell and Karl-Anthony Towns. As Justin alluded to, in the split so far this season when Anthony Edwards has been off the floor, Cat has been the one who's benefited outsized compared to D'Angelo Russell. But certainly Russell having the ball in his hands, and with some of these perimeter defenders that the Lakers are going to be putting out there on him, it's going to be a pretty good spot for D'Angelo as well to get that revenge.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of other COVID team situations, let's talk about the Magic, because I do think this game is in jeopardy of not playing tonight. They added 3 more players to the health and safety protocols today: Mo Wagner, Terrence Ross, and
Brazdeikis,
Brazdeikis. So they also have questionable on the injury report Cole Anthony, Mo Bamba, and Gary Harris. And they need all 3 of those players to be cleared to play, to have 8 players to play today. So there's a very good chance that this game gets canceled, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would think so. The ways that this gets played is obviously all 3 go, or just 2 go, and they like designate one as active but won't play, which has happened many times in the past. So I think there's still paths for this to play, but definitely postponement risk, or risk here where this just doesn't go. So I mean, if all those 3 guys play, they have 8 players, like you said, and basically just have 3 guards in Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, and Michael Mulder, right? You can basically pencil in Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, and Franz Wagner for like 34, 35 minutes minimum. Like, unless those guys are banged up, like Cole and Gary aren't 100% and they're like on some sort of minutes limit, those guys are going to have to play all of the minutes. They just don't have that many options. Like, one of their 8 guys is Robin Lopez, and like he doesn't play a ton, right? And they're so I mean, what do we think here in terms of the rotation and who benefits the most here?
Yeah, so just to add, this is the same ankle that Cole Anthony sprained last month and missed time. And then Gary Harris has pulled his hamstring like I don't even know how many times. So honestly, I think the most likely scenario is the available 8th guy. And I mean, obviously Bamba has been injury prone as well. So like I don't know how all 3 of these guys are going to be in there. But it's the headline to me is like Franz Wagner is going to be freaking cooking. He's going to just be really, really active here. Going to get a lot of shots from 3. Like you said, his minutes are going to be really, really, really high. He probably has to play garbage time with some of the older guys on his roster. So his playing time could be just ridiculous today.
Yeah, I mean, I think if they do have 8 and are able to play, I think you would see a ton of Franz Wagner minutes. I mean, could touch 40. I think you'd see if Cole Anthony could touch 40 if he's good to go. Wendell Carter Jr. could touch upper 30s in this scenario. It's really, really tight. Obviously, like Gary Harris would be the starting shooting guard in the spot. He's played a lot more than I thought he could during the course of the year, and he's questionable with hamstring tightness. So like, I would be very hesitant to think that he could shoulder a really, really big load.
Yeah, even if he gets clear to play and starts, there's always that aggravation risk with that tight hamstring. So like, there's a risk that he won't make it through, and he either aggravates it or is limited in terms of his minutes. So he's definitely a pretty risky play. I feel better about Cole with his ankle if he's ready, if he's clear to play, than I do about Gary Harris.
I agree, and I don't think this is a spot, honestly, with the current price tags that you're attacking too much anyway. I mean, Franz is 6,200 on DraftKings. On FanDuel at 5,700, he's very much in play for sure. Wendell Carter Jr. it's around 7K is probably in play. Cole around 7K, like you could do it, but you'll probably find better options than going up against Miami. And the other thing I'd note is Miami played a lot of zone against Embiid, and Miami's lacking a lot of size right now. So the type of player that is going to beat a zone well is going to be a player that can shoot and a player that can, facilitate and kind of move the ball into the right places. And so Franz and maybe Okeke would be the guys that kind of are a little bit more interesting to me. We saw Chuma get the start last time, play 32 minutes, played into garbage time as well, did not play very well, but was out there for all that time. So that was with Bamba down. So it's a different scenario tonight for sure. But he's another player that I think you could probably see pretty big minutes from, just given, the lack of roster. I mean, we're talking 8 guys, and one of them, 2 of them are Robin Lopez and Michael Mulder, who they're only going to play, as many minutes as needed, essentially.
Yeah, I think Okeke can definitely get up to 26 plus in this spot. They obviously prefer him to Robin Lopez, and they're starting 2 centers anyways with Wendell and Mobile. You can slide one over and have them serve as the backup center with Chuma at the 4. So I will say, to close this, like, this Heat defense is still pretty vulnerable. They have this reputation of being very solid, but since Jimmy, Bam have gone down, they've been you can definitely attack this team. They're a funnel defense. As always, they funnel 3-point attempts. So if you have guys who can shoot threes, you can definitely put up some points against this team.
Yeah, they're number 2 in highest frequency in 3-pointers since Bam went down. So they're still just letting teams bomb on them.
Yeah, they funneled it last year too. They're just a funnel 3-point attempt defense, just in general.
Yeah. And funnel 3-point attempt offense this year, right? Without Jimmy and Bam, they've got very little kind of mid-tier type scoring. So you've seen Duncan Robinson bombing away, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent bombing away. I mean, Gabe Vincent last game was just nuclear against the 76ers. So let's talk about the Miami side of things, where Tyler Hero is questionable, and so is Omar Yurtseven. And with Tyler Hero, we saw last game what that resulted in, which was a lot of Gabe Vincent, a lot of Duncan Robinson, a lot of Max Strus. KZ Okpala didn't benefit quite as much. They didn't really need him nearly as much. They were really trying to fill out those guard minutes. So you see there really tight rotations. Duncan Robinson, 39 minutes. He had the shot going. Gabe Vincent, 35 minutes, really had the shot going. Those two combined for 11 for 23 from 3-point range. Kyle Lowry got another 9 threes off. I mean, they're taking 45 threes a night with this type of group. So high variance offense, high variance outcomes, certainly. What do you think in terms of probability of Tyler Hero being able to go today?
Didn't go through shoot around, which is not a good sign. So I would say he probably leans out again. Gabe Vincent gets a start. Gabe Vincent showed the last 3 starts averaging like 28.5 FanDuel points per game, 33 minutes per game. Really great underlying numbers. Last game, Gabe Vincent showed, like you said, 29.5% usage, led all Heat players. Kyle Lowry second at 24%, Duncan Robinson at 21%. So it's going to be pretty concentrated, I think, among those 3 guys, Gabe Vincent, Kyle Lowry, and Duncan Robinson. And, this Magic team has always been, they're pretty bad overall, half court, everywhere, but they're more vulnerable on the perimeter. That's where you want to generally attack them. And you have these guys. I mean, these guys 1 through 3 that we like on the Heat. They're shooting guard and small forward, which just lines up perfectly. So I think you don't overcomplicate those two guys, the biggest beneficiaries. I will say we get Duncan Robinson on the road today. We've talked about this on the show before. Duncan Robinson, 38% on the road from 3, 27% from 3 at home. Obviously noisy, but that's still kind of a fun thing to look at. So if you want even more reason to like Duncan Robinson today, I think it's those three really that benefit.
Yeah.
I'll add too if I can. Lowry's had like some tough matchups since this kind of role opened up for him. Sixers, Cavs, Bulls, Bucks twice, and this new Grizzlies defense without John Morant. Like those are tough matchups. Now he gets to, as you mentioned, like they get roasted every night by perimeter guys. They have the worst half-court defense in the NBA this month, 26th overall, and they're going to play half-court against them. So, like Kyle Lowry, we saw him get 39 minutes in the last game. Like he could really cook, assuming this game goes. But it's probably going to be a blowout. It's funny. I was talking to a fan earlier, and there was a report of the Magic getting more tests, and I was like, I'm just going to blind bet the Magic to cover this, just in case somebody gets pulled for COVID. And apparently that's going to be now, so we'll see.
Yeah, Lowry 7,000 on FanDuel, a really good price tag over there. Commenter asked, does Drew Dinkmeyer realize that he's the one that brings the least to the table here? Absolutely, 100%. I'm very
that is not true.
I'm very comfortable in my role.
Are you kidding me?
No, the last time we were here, I was just letting you guys cook, and like pretty much everything I just say is like, I agree with Justin. Okay, let's move on.
Can we also acknowledge that Drew Dinkmeyer is the only one of this three that has to juggle NFL as well on top of this NBA show? Like, can we give this man some credit?
We're good. I'm very comfortable in the host role here. Let's talk about from Orlando Magic to the Sacramento Kings. Kings, another situation where I think we could have a postponement because they're just short bodies as well. So, and the Kings thing has taken hold really quickly. Like it's been these last 2 days, like everybody is getting added to health and safety protocols. I do appreciate the Kings' optimism with their injury report because they're the only team in the league that has chosen to list guys doubtful with health and safety protocols and not out. So they're still giving a chance.
All positive. You never know.
That De'Aaron Fox and Alex Len could play, even though they are listed as with health and safety protocols. So in Sacramento's protocols, you've got Marvin Bagley, Terrence Davis, De'Aaron Fox, Lewis King, Alex Len. And then on the injury side, you've got Rashawn Holmes still doubtful with the eye issue, Tyrese Halliburton questionable with back soreness, Chimezi Metu questionable with left knee soreness as well. So you've got two questionable players there that they really need to play to kind of make things work in terms of the numbers. So Justin, this is your time to shine. How many available players do we have for the Sacramento Kings tonight? What are we looking at?
Yeah, so without those guys, without Halliburton and Chimezi, I think they have 9. They have Davion, Buddy Hield, Harrison Barnes, Harkless, Tristan Thompson, which would be the presumed starting five if Hallie and Metu are out. And their bench would be Jamias Ramsey, Woodard II, Damian Jones, and Keita, right? So, and I think Woj said they're probably going to sign Justin Robinson with the hardship, exception. If they're forced to play. So if that happens, we'll have 10, which is two more than some other teams have. So they'll have some bodies, not some of them won't be very good, but they'll have options at least. So what I will say about this matchup for the Kings, whereas we're looking at other spots with Orlando against a more vulnerable Heat defense, this Grizzlies defense since Ja Morant has gone down has been the best in the league by a significant margin. So this is a spot where they're shorthanded, guys are stepping into bigger roles, bigger minutes, bigger usage, but they're stepping in a buzzsaw, and like their efficiency is going to be pretty brutal overall. So you're just kind of having to depend on volume. One guy I think that applies to particularly here is Buddy Hield. So if Buddy Hield gets to start, he'll probably see the Dylan Brooks matchup, and that's something that will be terrible for him on an efficiency standpoint. I think the minutes and the usage will be there for him, but I mean, am I excited to fire up somebody against Dylan Brooks and this Grizzlies defense right now? Not really. Davion Mitchell gets Tyus Jones too. How are you guys kind of balancing this thing where you're having increased opportunity, increased minutes with some injuries, with some COVID versus this matchup against the Grizzlies?
I think Tyrese. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's an interesting spot because we have seen the Kings play super tight rotations in the past when they were, more limited in their roster. But it's not a different coaching staff, but it was a different coach in Luke Walton that was playing guys, 36, 37 minutes. And so the question for me is, are these guys like Davion Mitchell, Buddy Hield, if they do move into the starting lineup, do we see them touch those types of minutes? Because Davion Mitchell's 3,600 on DraftKings. I assume, would be very, very chalky if you start to project in that range. We're at the 33 range right now because we're not going all the way up there because we haven't seen it before, so it's tough to project. But you look at the back end of this roster, and there's certainly the opportunity to do so. So, Mike, do you think we see the really tight Sacramento rotations, the Harrison Barnes 36, the Buddy Hield 34, the Davion Mitchell 36, the Halliburton 36, 37, if Halliburton can play? Do you think we see those types of rotations tonight?
Yes, and I think Halliburton's not playing. He had a back injury mid-November, didn't play, and that was in a non-back-to-back game as well. So I think he's going to sit, which is why how bad are we in shape here? We're going to freaking sign some guy today to bring him over with Justin Robinson. Like, it's just crazy. So yeah, Davion, man, he's got a 114-minute sample without Halliburton, Fox, 9 assists per 36, 16 points. So I think he's going to have a huge role here. We saw what he did in Summer League. So, I'm really fired up, even in a bad matchup, to go with some Davion if Halliburton can't go.
He's super cheap. He's 4,700 on FanDuel. The 3,600 on DraftKings is going to attract a ton of ownership. The one thing I'll note, though, is that, generally guard is one of the spots that's a little bit easier to fill normally. So we'll see how much ownership the 4,700 draws on FanDuel. But I think this is a situation to definitely monitor. I do think the reporting that Justin referenced with them willing to sign Justin Robinson if they need to play the game makes it very unlikely that this game gets postponed. The only way that would happen, I think, is if a slew of more positive tests rolled in on the Kings today. And obviously that's just an unknown.
They've had one of the more aggressive outbreaks within the team of any team where their coaches, they have staff that's getting positive tests. It's gone throughout their organization, right? One other thing I'll note too on Davion, if Halliburton's out, Davion becomes, I think, pretty easy just because of the minutes upside. And I mentioned they have 9 players if Halliburton and Metu are out. Yeah. Two of those 4 on the bench are centers. And Damian Jones and Keita, right? So they don't have any guard depth, which hence this Justin Robinson Hail Mary, right? So Davion could easily touch 40 minutes in this one, just given their lack of backcourt depth.
And no matter what the game environment is, too. And it's they'd view it as an opportunity to just get an extended look at their first round pick. So I do think the Kings will be a spot for a lot of value tonight. Certainly we do have to monitor who's going to be available because these are, Metu and Halliburton are not only big pieces in terms of how we'd project the rotation currently, but they're also big rates pieces. Halliburton is a guy who has a huge assist rate. In this instance with De'Aaron Fox, I think it jumps even further because I think he is then the primary point guard running all of the offense, running all the pick and roll stuff. It does hurt him that they don't have Rashawn Holmes for that stuff, which was their bread and butter before. But also Metu is a huge rebounding rate guy. I mean, really, really aggressive rebounder. So if you remove those two guys, the minutes that you're going to give to other guys in the rotation are going to be lighter rate guys, and it's going to boost everybody up. So Sacramento is going to look okay right now from a value perspective, but it can get so much better during the course of the night. So just be prepared in terms of late swapping and different things like that to potentially take advantage of this situation. All right. We are 30 minutes in.
I think one more thing. I think Sacramento is one that reports late too. So they're not one that gets out injury news early on in the day. So this is one that you're probably going to get closer to media availability, after a lock. Halliburton and that too.
Agreed.
And I'll add another quick one if I can add. Buddy Hield's got some ball handling chops too, earlier in his career. So we could see a little bit of that if things are in dire straits.
All right. 35 minutes into the show, and we just cleared COVID protocols and now actual injuries to talk about. So let's try to move our way through these relatively quickly. The big questionables on this slate. The first one is a health and safety protocols return. He's been out of health and safety protocols for 4 or 5 days now, LaMelo Ball, but has been working back on reconditioning. He is listed as questionable on the injury report tonight. It is a late game. We've seen the Hornets play these super, super tight rotations in the absence of LaMelo Ball. We also got a preview of what they do when they bring guys back from reconditioning because we had Terry Rozier come back as well as Mason Plumlee. So we have a little bit of history here and how to handle things. What are your thoughts, Justin, in terms of whether we see LaMelo Ball tonight?
Yeah, I would lean towards him playing just because he's had some time to ramp up, get some reps under his belt. but I don't feel that great about it. We haven't really had that much information. Just like the transactional news is pretty much it, and we haven't had a lot of like level of detail. And I would think that he would be under a minutes limit if he does play, just given how long it's been since he's been, seen game action. So yeah, I mean, we kind of know the drill. If LaMelo ends up being ruled out, it should be a lot of Terry Rozier, Bridges, a couple others. So yeah, I think I don't really have a strong lean on this one just because there hasn't been a ton of information.
Mike, do you have any lean on LaMelo tonight?
No, I don't. Like you said, you would think right, given its reconditioning, he's got a reconditioning tag before. He's been cleared for a few days. He's taking longer. They
also noted when they first pulled him out of health and safety protocols, they noted he's not going to play Wednesday. We're hopeful he can play on Friday. So like this has all been consistent messaging all the way through, which gives me a slight lean on more likely to play than not.
Yeah. And I'll just add too, man, the Hornets have been missing guys, like whether it was PJ and then Mason Plumlee, protocol stuff. They haven't had a healthy team since the 3rd of November. So we were trying to figure out their minutes. And this is like before Borrego even discovered this little McDaniels small ball stuff that he was running out there with Cody Martin, Miles Bridges and stuff. So we were doing their projections earlier. It was tough to figure out who to pinch and stuff.
They're also a spot where because they've been playing so tight of late, all the guys' prices have risen really, really aggressively. So you almost need LaMelo in there, or LaMelo out, to even like unlock some plays. Because otherwise with LaMelo in, it squeezes the minutes, it squeezes the rates. These guys are priced up a little bit. LaMelo's probably going to be on some sort of minutes limit that makes him less appealing. So I think Charlotte as a whole is probably not going to be a place that you're attacking from a DFS perspective, most likely tonight.
LaMelo will be on the early Borrego minutes restriction plan. I think 30 minutes max.
Yeah, I mean that's the LaMelo minutes restriction plan that he had when he was fully healthy as well for a period of time. Yeah. So always fun trying to figure out when LaMelo is actually going to access that ceiling. Also on the injury report tonight, big questionable tag is Clint Capela. And I think the timing of this one is particularly interesting because Onyeka Okongwu is probable and he's been playing with the G League team. They've talked about wanting to like have his energy back. And we know Capela started off the season sort of slow, kind of rehabbing from the offseason and working his way back in. And we know that he's a guy specifically that since they've acquired him from Houston years ago, they have been very careful in managing kind of all the way through. And now they have another body that they trust and that they want to get a look at to potentially ease some of that burden. So I thought the combination of Okongwu available and Capela midday downgrade to questionable was very eye-raising. What do you think about this one tonight, Justin?
Yeah, I think the pieces fit together and it kind of tells a narrative. So, it wouldn't be surprising in the least to see Capela sit this one out. It's an illness rather than kind of an Achilles that he's been dealing with or some leg issue. If it was a leg issue, I'd definitely like kind of lean him being out. I would say the biggest takeaway for me, if Capela misses, is me being interested in Nikola Jokic on the other side. That's probably my biggest takeaway.
Mike,
so you're saying you're not interested in Jokic right now?
No, I am, but I'd be even more interested in Jokic.
Mike, who do you think would start if Capela was unable to start tonight? Do you think that would be a big, or do you think they'd slide John Collins to the 5?
Probably got to be a big against Joker, right? We've seen coaches really lean into a bigger body against them. I don't think they want to do that with John Collins. So it'd probably be Gorgie Jang. I don't think you'd want to bring a Kongwu right there off the bat. So I think that's kind of straightforward. Joker had a pretty good game against him in the last time. They had 32 matchup minutes and Joker went 20, 17, and 9. Not bad. I think Joker's going to get so much offense. Just quickly on Denver's side, Malone said that Barton still has 100% from his illness. So he may not be 100% to, put up numbers. I think it's just going to be Joker fest.
Okongwu, they've talked about there would be some sort of minutes restriction on him. Yep. What do you guys think that minutes restriction would be? Like 15, 16, 18, something like that is what you're thinking?
Yeah, I would project him like 15. If Capela ends up missing.
So that would open up a really big role for Gorgie Jang in this spot. And he's been a really good per-minute producer historically when he's gotten opportunities. But just thinking through, they certainly can get away with some John Collins minutes at the center. They can stagger into that backup unit and whatnot. But you might have a situation here. They're so thin on the wings and at the 4 spot that, they can't play a ton of John Collins at the center, maybe 15 minutes, something like that. You get 15 for Okongwu, then you get 18 to 20 for Jeng, something like that. So, Gorgie with a little bit of upside to get into the 20s might be relevant. Probably more on like the night slates or the secondary slates, not the main slates, but just something to be aware of there if Gorgie does start, because he's been a very good spot starter for fantasy and DFS purposes throughout his career.
I don't think they would go crazy. I don't know if he'd be a great play. It'd be pretty thin to me because they could still run and try the Gallo. Gallo's got some size. You could just kind of throw a body at him that way. It would be that. Like the Joker's just going to smash kind of regardless. But I don't think they would go nuts with Jang in that spot.
Okay, good to know. We talked about Hero in your 7 when talking about the Heat, so I can move on to like these secondary questionables, and then we can get out of here. But Lonnie Walker, questionable for San Antonio last game. They were awful. And so, from a minutes perspective, I don't know how this shakes things out too much other than you see like a little hot hand, opportunity for Vassell, for, Bryn Forbes and those types of guys. Do you think Lonnie Walker would, move the needle much at all here if he's out tonight?
Not too much. I think the biggest impact, Bryn Forbes went from like a DNP CD the game before to playing 19 minutes off the bench. So I think that's,
Yeah. I think we've taken like 12 Bryn Forbes props this year. So I'm particularly attuned to this Lonnie Walker situation just because we immediately were firing on Forbes over 8.5 PRA last game. So that's something that I'll just note, that if Lonnie's out, I think the books don't do a great job at adjusting these back end guys, and Forbes is the guy who probably benefits most outsized. Obviously, the minutes in the production last game were out. Him getting 10 free throw attempts in a game is totally shocking. He might not have 10 the rest of the year. So there's a lot of outlier performances in that, but him and Vassell are the guys who stand the most to benefit in that scenario. I think it's not that big of a deal. Any other questionables or injury tags that I missed that we need to talk about? Oh, the Bucks.
Yeah. So Giannis, Bobby Portis, DiVincenzo, Wes Matthews all out. Chris Middleton probable with that knee. The Gnosis is doubtful. Boogie Cousins is in. So we should see like Mamu get the spot start at center, I would think. I will lean that way. Drew Grayson, Middleton, Connaughton, and Mamu being the likely 5. Hill, Smart, Hood, Mora, and Boogie Cousins off the bench there. Pretty small bench, like a lot of guards and wings, and then Boogie Cousins. So Mamu just had 21.1 minutes in that lone spot start this season, but he should see, maybe like mid 20s in this spot, maybe upper 20s, but I think more mid. Boogie Cousins being, I think, the bigger beneficiary coming off that bench. We know what he does with that usage and just in limited minutes, he can really put numbers up. I think the biggest winner here is probably Drew Holiday, plus 12% usage rate differential this season with Giannis and Bobby Portis off the court. And then Middleton obviously is pretty interesting too, plus 10% differential, but I am a little weary of his minutes potentially, just given recently how Bud handled Giannis with that calf injury coming back and putting a limit on his minutes. So I think of the two, I'd probably lean towards Drew just because I don't have to worry about him potentially getting limited with the minutes. But yeah, I think both of them are good spots, Drew, Middleton, and then Boogie Cousins.
I agree with literally everything you said. to the minute, totally agree.
The thing that I'll note is specifically is this matchup, right? Going up against New Orleans and Jonas Valanciunas and Willie Hernan Gomez, both like giant human beings, just really, really big human beings. So you're going to need a lot of size in this matchup. We have like normally Milwaukee has been comfortable playing some, smaller ball center lineups, but usually they have Giannis and Bobby to kind of be able to do that. I don't think they do that with Nora. But like we're having a hard time with the projections just because I don't want to go too nuts on Sandro and Boogie. Sandro because of the foul trouble that I foresee against Jonas, and then Boogie because I just don't know conditioning wise how much he can really handle. Boogie is one of the toughest players for me to project on the slate for a number of reasons. One is if you look at Boogie's rates historically, they've been dominant. They've been huge. And even in his spot his small stints the last few years with, secondary teams like the Rockets and stuff, he's posted really big rates. I don't know if they will continue while playing with Milwaukee. And I think that's one of the main reasons that he will certainly come off the bench, because the bench unit will not have a lot of shot creation to it, and he can soak up possessions there. But if he's in the starting lineup with Drew and Middleton, I just don't think they need to give him the ball very much. And so I think it's actually better for Boogie if he's playing off the bench on two fronts. One, I think going up against Willy Hernangomez for more of your minutes is a better matchup than against Valanciunas. And two, I think it'll be staggered away from Middleton and Drew a little bit in terms of getting that usage upside. So he's 3,100 on DraftKings, 3,700 on FanDuel. I think he'll be one of the more popular plays on the slate. And don't get worried about it if he's not starting. I don't think it hurts him. In many ways, I think it helps him. And then Sandro, I will say, really tough player to project as well, because his rates have been really, really low this year when he's gotten these opportunities. And he is limited offensively, so kind of needs to rely on putbacks and stuff. And good Lord, trying to get that stuff against Jonas, if he is the starter, is really, really tough. So I would have a really strong preference on DeMarcus over Sandro, even if Sandro is starting in this spot.
Yeah, Sandro averaging a whopping 10 and 9 per 36. Not inspiring in the least bit. On Boogie Cousins, like you mentioned, his playing time, he hasn't played since February of this year, which spans the last season. He's played more than 24 minutes once. It concerns me a little bit. Like, so what do you think his realistic range of minutes here is?
I think his range is like 19 to 26.
Okay, I think that's fair.
He did get up to the 30s with Houston a few times. He got like a 36 in there, because I was looking at all this stuff too, Justin, and it was tough to figure out. But they're so thin behind him that, like, look, if Sandro gets like 4 fouls in 12 minutes,
he's going to get dominated by Valanciunas. Boogie's going to have to come in. Like, that's just going to happen.
Yeah. So that's the concern. But I think Boogie's going to be a really good play tonight.
I agree.
Yeah, a couple things to add. Willie Green's played Valanciunas 19 first half minutes 5 times. Like, Valanciunas, like, this dude does not care about playing in big minutes. And two, we got a 45-minute sample of Demarcus Cousins without Portis and Giannis, 25 usage rate per 36 of 19, 13, and 4.
Which sounds like Boogie, right? That sounds like historical Boogie. So
so it's going to be Boogie time, and possible flag plant later today.
Well, nice. On the other side, like you mentioned, I think it's Valanciunas time. What a good spot for him, right? You're going to have
one of the spots that the projection systems will have a hard time understanding the level of defensive.
Oh God, Juancho Hernangomez in the protocol now. Yeah, we lost the bet, guys. Almost made it.
I should have just ended the show before we get more.
That Boogie set in there.
So I would say that the projection systems are going to rate the Bucks as if they are a good defensive team on the whole, and losing Giannis is a big deal to that, especially to the front court. They're still going to have all the defensive skill in the backcourt and on the wings with Drew and Connaughton and Middleton and these guys, but that front court got a lot worse. No Brook Lopez, no Giannis. Even Bobby Portis has been like a fine defender the last few years in terms of forcing turnovers and rebounding and stuff. So I do think it's a good spot for Jonas tonight. Okay.
Do we consider Anna's freedom now or no?
No, we're not revisiting Boston. Juancho's minutes, I think, are going to get taken over more by the Naismith, Langford, and Pritchard type group than I think going to Ennis. Ennis will not last very long on the floor tonight against the Warriors stuff, is my guess.
The pace of Celtics Warriors should be pretty nice.
Should be quite good.
Just given the number of small lineups Boston should be playing.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree. All right, Justin, thank you so much for joining the show on Fridays. You can follow all of Justin's work and his great team over at Underdog Fantasy, underdog__NBA, the best Twitter account in the business in terms of giving news and notifications and keeping you up to speed with NBA injury information. Just an incredible team over there. Justin, thank you for joining us on this Friday. Hope you have a great weekend. Mike, thank you for coming out of the bushes and out of the woodworks for this show as well. I will be back on with you at 5 o'clock Eastern behind the paywall at Established Run. If you are not subscribed to Established Run, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel here to get all the notifications when we go live Monday through Friday at 2 o'clock Eastern. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll see you again on Monday.